When we entered this game, the hooded figure was our biggest unknown. And now, even after completing the story, Astor, the Prophet of Doom, still remains this game's biggest unanswered question. Astor received his fair share of time in the spotlight throughout Age of Calamity, but it was always focused on his ambitions, his plan to bring Calamity to pass no matter the cost. Never does the game go into the man himself and how he got to where he is. The most we get for a backstory to this character is a description under his section in the game's gallery. The description mentions hailing from a village in Hyrule, but doesn't even name drop it. Nor does it go into explaining the big questions behind this character, like how he found Harbinger Ganon. Was he the fortune teller Breath of the Wild and Age of Calamity have teased oh so much? And why does his cloak have the Gerudo insignia proudly displayed on the back? He comes from a village in Hyrule. He is referred to as a seer and a prophet, as well as seen to possess great magical talent. He possesses his own delusions of grandeur and power. He carries an object similar to a giant ancient core. He aligned himself with Ganon and Harbinger Ganon to bring Hyrule to its knees. He came into contact with Harbinger Ganon, or Age of Calamity's original Terrako, sometime after the Malice followed Terrako back from the future. He works alongside the Yiga clan before betraying them for use as blood sacrifices. He refers to himself as being selected by Calamity Ganon, and finally he meets his end after trying to order Ganon and no longer being of any use to him. His village unnamed, his role as Hyrule's fortune teller unconfirmed, his orb never explained, his reasons not defined, his meeting never shown, his relationship ended abruptly, his selection not justified, and his end unsatisfying. So do you see now why Astor is still, and will continue to be, this game's biggest unanswered question? His past is void, his present mysterious, and his future very uncertain. Maybe we're looking at another classic Write the Rest Yourselves from the Zelda series, or perhaps there is a story still left to be told for this character. After all, the game's predecessor did receive a DLC expansion set from the villain's point of view, and evidence of Astor being featured as a playable character has already been discovered in the game's files. And even if DLC is not in the cards for him, well, Breath of the Wild sequel is still on the way. Speaking bluntly on the matter, I'm looking at Astor's future with a somewhat cynical approach. I would love more than anything to see this fascinating new villain rear his head in Breath of the Wild 2, but I don't really think it will happen. That doesn't mean that I haven't been hard at work imagining a path to make it happen though, and connecting the dots on how this character could be used in the future and the interesting backstory they could have. So here's my vision for Astor, and how to expand upon him as a character going forward. But before we go forward, we need to go back. It all starts with a little confirmed information we have on Astor's origins. He hails from a certain village in Hyrule. My first thought when reading this was, why does the description not outright name drop his village? Is there some yet to be seen importance to this? Then I brought that thought back to Astor's robe, and the proudly displayed Gerudo crest on the back. Could Astor really be a Gerudo? Well, not quite. See, the Gerudo Desert isn't exactly home to many settlements, and neither Gerudo Town nor Karakara Bazaar fit the moniker of village. So, no, I don't think that Astor is a secret male Gerudo of this time period, back with a vengeance for his ancestor, the man that became Calamity Ganon. That backstory just doesn't quite fit him. So I continued searching. He could be from Mabe Village right on the outskirts of Hyrule Castletown. Maybe Tabantha Village in the frigid northwest. Or maybe Lurelin Village, the most quaint and out-of-the-way settlement in Hyrule, that might just be hiding an interesting past. See, this is where my theory on Astor's backstory gets really interesting. I've been making theories about Breath of the Wild 2 for about a year now, and whenever Lurelin Village has come up, the most intriguing topic has not been the small fishing village it is in Breath of the Wild, but the history of its people's past, particularly the main symbol of the village, and how it links back to currently one of the biggest mysteries in the Zelda universe, the Zonai tribe. If you're not already familiar with this incredibly interesting group of people teased in Breath of the Wild, I'd recommend you watch one of these theories for a more in-depth look into exactly what the story is behind them. But for a basic explanation, the Zonai is a lost tribe of Hyrule that no longer exists. They are responsible for a number of Breath of the Wild's most striking ruins. They were said to be barbaric people, but also skilled magic users. Their signature symbol was a spiral swirl, and this symbol seems to live on as the banner of Lurelin Village. As the theory then goes, this small, unremarkable village off the coast of Hyrule might just be hiding the remnants of its most mysterious group of people, the Zonai. Now, what does that have to do with the Prophet of Doom, Astor? Well, going by my theory, everything. I think that Astor hails from Lurelin Village, and that his thirst for power and connection to Calamity Ganon is in his blood. Many people have interpreted the Zonai tribe and their past in different ways, but in the same theory I alluded to earlier, I uncovered a potential darker path this civilization took to its demise. If you want to hear the full story, again, I highly suggest checking out that video, but the main message is that the Zonai were actually followers of Ganondorf, and that the majority of their race died off trapped underground with his corpse. The remains of Zonai civilization then settled the fishing village of Lurelin. Most tried to forget their past and live the quiet life, but remnants of the past remained. One of the things that bothers me the most about Astor coming out of Age of Calamity is how his robe is never given an explanation. It's not every day you see someone walking around in a tattered, ancient-looking Gerudo robe. We already settled Astor himself is not Gerudo, and I don't think this robe once belonged to Ganondorf. It's too small for him. So who else would have access to such a garment? Maybe the ancestors of those who wore them. That's right. I think this is actually an ancient Zonai magician's robe, one of the few remaining artifacts of the past that was held in Lurelin Village. The Gerudo symbol on the back was there to honor their leader. And the orb that Astor uses is not just Sheikah technology, but also a fusion of Zonai. Astor, unlike most people in his village, valued his history. He had inherited magical powers, and the ability to use the Zonai Sheikah heirloom as his ancestors did. He was unsatisfied living the quiet life of a fisherman, knowing he was capable of so much more. And that's when he was selected.
How? The great Calamity Ganon selected me! This humiliation cannot be my destiny! It cannot be! Hear me, Calamity Ganon! It's time for you to devour these!
Astor refers to himself as being selected by Calamity Ganon, and while it might seem like he's talking about Harbinger Ganon selecting him, I don't think that's the case. One does not simply transform into a dark sorcerer with this much control over his new powers to command and control malice overnight. I think Calamity Ganon actually chose Astor long before the events of Age of Calamity. How, I'm not entirely sure. Maybe through some telepathic link thanks to his ancestry, or maybe through Astor's own will to seek out Ganon. But one way or another, Astor was chosen as Ganon's servant and right hand long before Age of Calamity. And the purpose as to why, well, that's something we've talked about on the channel before as well. Setting up the Great Calamity for success. In Breath of the Wild, we don't only learn about the Great Calamity that destroyed Hyrule 100 years ago, but also about the first Great Calamity, when Ganon rose from the castle 10,000 years ago, but was defeated thanks in part to the Divine Beasts and the Princess with the Sealing Power. Hyrule won 10,000 years ago, but Ganon now knew what had to be done for his own victory. Use the Divine Beasts against Hyrule, and eradicate the Princess with the power to seal him. Ganon could not do this alone, which is why he selected his servant, Astor. Astor is referred to throughout Age of Calamity as a seer, prophet, and even a prophecy man, as so elegantly stated by my friend Master Koga here. But the game never goes quite far enough to confirm Astor as the same fortune teller that foretold the return of Calamity Ganon. But I think there is enough evidence pointing to the fact that he is this fortune teller. First, there's his titles, then his orb, which does look strikingly similar to a crystal ball, and then finally, his abilities. Creating the Champion describes the fortune teller as this: after the events of 10,000 years ago, and up until 100 years ago, Calamity Ganon was only spoken of in legends and fairy tales. That changed when a Hylian fortune teller foretold its revival. The reason we know the fortune teller must have been a trusted aide or a high-ranking official is because the king believed the prophecy and acted on it. Now, if Astor was to walk into the castle one day and just start spouting nonsense about the return of Calamity Ganon, there is no way he would qualify as a trusted advisor. But if he infiltrated the castle and stole the identity of the kingdom's long-trusted seer, that might just work. Who knows, maybe while in such a trusted position, he could knock out both of Ganon's goals at once. This isn't really anything new for the Zelda series either. This character archetype has been around ever since Aghanim in A Link to the Past. Things went too perfectly for Calamity Ganon upon his arrival for there not to be someone pulling the strings for him, and no one fits that bill better than Astor. I argue that there is a strong case to be made that Astor is Hyrule's unidentified savior, the Fortune Teller, and that this is the primary purpose for which Ganon used him. That is, before Hyrule's fate split. The timeline where Harbinger Ganon, the Terrako of Age of Calamity's time, came to find Astor, or the timeline where Astor never found the Malice-infused Terrako and carried out his duties without its aid. When Terrako traveled back in time, Malice from the future followed. That Malice activated the Terrako of the past sitting deactivated on the shelf of Zelda Study, and that's what makes the difference between Age of Calamity and Breath of the Wild. Age of Calamity is basically a story about who can change fate the most, whereas Breath of the Wild is the story of fate. Terrako going back in time amplified Astor's usefulness to Ganon, as it tipped the scales in the kingdom's favor. This meant Ganon needed his own defense against Terrako changing the future, which came in the form of controlling Harbinger Ganon and giving Astor more direct orders. Meanwhile, in Breath of the Wild's timeline, he remained in the shadows, corrupting the divine beasts and creating the blights right under the kingdom's nose. The only question then left is, in Breath of the Wild's timeline, where is Astor now? Was he betrayed by Calamity Ganon yet again, except this time after their victory? Did he remain in the shadows and watch as Zelda kept Ganon at bay for 100 years? Or maybe even, did he go to meet his master? Astor is a fascinating new addition to the storyline started in Breath of the Wild, and there is so much left to explain, and so many options on how to expand his backstory, and maybe even his future. It's still up in the air if we will ever get to see a backstory for this character, such as this, but I'm holding out hope that we will see this villain, if not in Breath of the Wild 2, maybe in a DLC expansion for Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. Astor might be an underexplored character, but there is so much potential just waiting to be explored in both his past and future. If there is one element from Age of Calamity's story I hope reappears in the main Breath of the Wild timeline, it's him. Hey guys, hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you subscribe so you get to see when all the new videos come out, and you can help us get to our milestone for the end of the year, which is we want to get to 10K subscribers. We're actually getting pretty close. So if you want to help us out with that, subscribe to the channel. I would very much appreciate it. It would be your little gift to me this holiday season, and I very much appreciate that. Yeah. There's a lot to be excited about. 2021 is already looking pretty good for Zelda games, and we still have many things to talk about with Age of Calamity. I hope you guys enjoyed this dive into Astor, one of my favorite characters to come out of the game, one of the most interesting characters, one of the characters they need to expand on more, as we just talked about, but I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did enjoy it, you can subscribe, but you can also, if you want to be even cooler, you can follow me on Twitter, XenogamerYT, join the Discord, link in the description below, and we stream on Twitch every Friday, so go check us out over there too. Pretty cool place to be, you know? So, thanks. And finally, if you really want to help me out, you can also share the video around with a friend, you know? Tell them about it. If they like Zelda, they'll watch it. If they don't like Zelda, they'll look at it and say, what the heck is this? But either way, it's going to be a fun experience. I encourage you, share the video around. Like it if you did like it. You know, that helps too. And have a great day, guys. You know, it's a good time to have a great day, because I said it was. So you guys have yourselves a great day, as always. And I will see you soon with more videos. Hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.